Good evening and welcome back to our show In Other News. My name is Erica Adamson. I am a local writer and political analyst, and joining me tonight is attorney and political scientist Angelo Catanzaro, writer and political analyst Gabe Salazar, and then local lawyer Kurt Maida. And tonight we will be discussing recent developments in Venezuela, specifically the U.S. Operations in Venezuela that have unfolded in the last week or so. But we're excited to bring this up tonight because Gabe has been interested in covering this topic for months now, and we kept vetoing it. We kept saying, there's bigger topics at hand. There's more urgent news to cover, and I mean, in the last week, we've seen our president, not our president, but our country pretty much kidnap a foreign leader. So I wanted to ask, to start, where your interest began in this topic, what the situation unfolding in Venezuela. When did you begin to really start following it, and when did you start wanting to cover it?
Sure. I mean, I think I started around September when the first boats were bombed. I mean, that was just a major event for me. I would not have expected to hear something like that on the news. And then the fallout that resulted from that, right? Sort of these extrajudicial killings of these alleged drug boats being, bombed by United States forces. So that was the initial interest. I just wanted to talk about, I guess, the implications of what that could mean for other alleged, criminals in this country's view. But then things had escalated. Eventually, an oil tanker from Venezuela was also hijacked and taken into the custody of the United States, alleging that the boat was used to assist with the narco trafficking. And then finally, on January 2nd to January 3rd, Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, was bombed by United States military forces, and President Maduro was captured by U.S. military forces and shipped off to New York. So things have escalated pretty quickly since September, and I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of the way things unfolded when it comes to Venezuela's current situation. But of course, some of that did derive from long-standing tensions with the U.S. and Venezuela, and that's kind of where we wanted to take tonight's discussion into what had led to this unfolding of events, I mean, for us going forward. So. I want to talk a little about the history overview as well. Obviously, we did discuss, the recent bombings of these drug boats, but the United States had been looking at Venezuela's situation since 1999. Technically, Venezuela had been alleged to have been finding associations with narco trafficking since 2005. And executive orders since the Obama administration especially have really amped up boycotting a lot of Venezuelan economic transactions. And on that front, I guess one of the biggest questions is how did the United States lead up into such a, I don't want to say hostile, but it kind of feels like that, tense attitude towards Venezuela? What led to them being so insistent upon sanctioning this country, and why did they want to do that in such a way that other countries have not been treated this badly in other parts of Latin America or even globally? So yeah, I think based on the first assessment is why impose sanctions on Venezuela? Why do we have this overview? So Kurt, do you want to talk about the sanctioning history a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit of history. So we usually try to keep, the number of names to a minimum here, especially when we're talking about foreign countries. If folks don't know some of the internal workings of different countries, we don't want to overwhelm them. Two names I am going to use today. One, obviously, Gabe brought up was Nicolas Maduro, who has been the current president of the country, and his predecessor was Hugo Chavez. Chavez came into the country in the late 90s. And he came in with a program that focused on using oil revenue from the country over the last couple of decades and appropriating it into social justice programs. There was a great deal of economic inequality in that country historically, And President Chavez, Hugo Chavez, wanted to level the playing field by providing more benefits to people that were at risk, marginalized populations, women in poverty, as well as the middle and lower classes, who often were not party to some of the educational programs in the country, because most of the country was largely privatized, as well as healthcare. So revenues were being reshifted from the oil industry to the social programs. Starting in 2001, the country passed a hydrocarbons law, which specifically stated that money would be appropriated for social justice programs around the country. In response, some of the American companies that were on the ground, the oil companies, had a great deal to say, and they felt that they were being put in a position where they would have to pay additional royalties, because that was part of the law, and it would make it more expensive for them to conduct business in Venezuela. And over time, what happened was, between 2001 and 2006, the president of Venezuela then decided to nationalize the natural resources of the country, specifically oil, which would require that 51% of all oil companies 51% of ownership would have to go to the government of Venezuela. Same thing, right? Yeah, right. Venezuela, and that really caused a great deal of anxiety and anger on the part of American oil companies, and they asked the U.S. government to get involved. So there was a series of sanctions that were applied to that country that crossed different administrations, from the Bush administration to the Obama administration to, both Trump administrations.
Mm-hmm. I mean, under the executive order passed by Obama in 2015, found that Venezuela was in an executive emergency human rights crisis.
And also a national security crisis for the United States.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, so between Hugo Chavez's platform, right, to increase, I guess, the standard of life for Venezuelans, and then 2015, I mean, what happened between the government and its promises to the Venezuelan people?
The lower classes were uplifted. Literacy rates were significantly improved. There was a greater deal of housing that was built for poor people. However, one of the most important things that happened in 2014 was that the price of petroleum oil crashed, essentially. It was in 2014, it was about $108 a gallon, and in a year's time, it dropped to $30 a gallon. Now, a significant portion of the Venezuelan economy was based on oil and oil exports, and that really wrecked the country. And at that same time, the executive order was passed by President Obama that declared a national emergency in the United States, not Venezuela, in the United States.
Right.
That country was
as a result of Venezuelans' condition.
Did the American oil companies have anything to do with the suppression of the oil prices worldwide?
I don't think that I think these were market forces. I don't know that this was across the world. It affected prices in the United States as well as in the Middle East.
Wasn't that one of the major problems that inflicted Venezuela? Was essentially because after nationalization, Venezuela continued to sell a tremendous amount of oil. The oil companies continued to run their concessions or whatever arrangement they had with Venezuela, and it was the decrease in prices that really turned the ship over.
Sure. I mean, the United States, we purchased 35% of the oil that Venezuela exported. It came down to 568,000 barrels, 568,000 barrels of oil a day were purchased by the United States up until the 2010s.
Okay, but the loss of profit to the oil companies was directly related also to the suppression of the oil prices. Okay, so
certainly.
I guess what I'm saying is that the decline of the economy in Venezuela was more linked to the depression of prices than it was linked to the socialization of the Venezuelan economy by Chavez or by anybody else. Because for 10 years or whatever, from 2006 through 2013, the economy, his programs were starting to work.
They were starting to work.
They were starting to work.
Yeah.
That's when also a pivot point. 2013, Chavez died due to cancer.
Right.
And his presidency was inherited by Maduro. So I mean,
Right.
does Maduro's legacy or his response to inheriting this power also have any contribution to the changing of the Venezuelan economy? Or is it just purely the market forces of the oil that we're talking
I think it was bad timing in part. 2014, when Maduro came in, that coincided with the drop in the oil prices that Angela just alluded to, and the economy contracted over the next several years by 70%. So for people that are watching, just to give them an idea, if you know a little bit about our own country's history, a 70% contraction is about 3 times of what the damage that was done during the Great Depression that we suffered in the 1930s. Now, multiply that by a factor of 3, and that's how bad it became in Venezuela. For all the programs that Chavez and part Maduro inherited in terms of the improvement of the social infrastructure of the country, the only thing that really sells in that country is oil. That was
the
mostly
main export.
Yeah. It was main export, and it's a main source of income. It's not a diversified economy.
So was it wrong? I mean, what was the reaction of the oil companies? You had said earlier that they reacted adversely with the nationalization and the changing of the percentages of what they were getting, but was there anything evil about that? I mean, the oil is a natural resource of Venezuela.
Sure.
And like you also just said, it was probably 70 or 80% of the economy of Venezuela. Most of their revenues was derived from the sale of oil.
Correct.
So the nationalization of the oil industry, we didn't seem to overly object to it when it occurred.
Yeah.
Okay, the knee-jerk reaction or the reaction resulted when the world price of oil crashed.
Right. Let me just interrupt you, Angelo. So in between that period, the nationalization in 2006 and the crash of oil in 2014, at the end of 2006, the United States and the oil companies didn't just lie low and accept these royalties, the additional enhanced royalties, with a smile. The government of the United States imposed restrictions on Venezuela in terms of their ability to access international credit markets. It made it much more difficult for them to borrow money. Now, in 2006, 2007, up until 2014, that wasn't really that big a deal. Venezuela's actually doing okay, even based on what Angelo said. In 2007, in fact, Chavez paid off all of Venezuela's debt to the IMF and to the World Bank in cash, in a bulk payment, because he didn't want to deal with those two entities anymore, thinking that they were U.S. controlled. Right. So they had the money to do that. However, they were setting a foundation. We were setting a foundation for making it more difficult for them to access credit over time, which after 2014 became a very important issue.
What was the justification of the American government at that time for doing that? Because that was during the Bush administration.
Correct.
What was things had been going along fairly well.
Yeah.
So what was the justification for doing that? Were there some other things going on in Venezuela that compelled the U.S. to do that?
The administration was getting pressure from American oil companies that they were losing not only profits but market share in the country. So there was the claim is that they were pressing the Bush administration to actually give some type of resistance, some form of revenge against the administration of Chavez.
Well, which didn't Chavez, when they made that change, they did decrease the concession fee that the American oil companies were able to keep.
Right.
Okay, but they also extended the time that the American oil companies could continue to take or to buy Venezuelan oil.
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, so the first evil step is what you're suggesting that we did was cut off their credit.
Right, but it didn't have a huge impact because the economy was going, things were going fairly well in Venezuela, and the price of oil was high. So it didn't really impact the country that significantly.
But I also read, and I think we had discussed this off air yesterday, that the loss of credit then prevented Venezuela from keeping up its oil industry by new equipment, new technology, or whatever. Okay, and that had an impact on the Venezuelan oil industry.
Absolutely, and especially by 2014 when the price of oil went down to $30 a gallon.
But weren't the company?
barrel.
But wasn't the industry that was extracting the oil primarily American and foreign companies?
They were foreign companies,
Right.
yeah.
So why weren't they? So they're saying they couldn't reinvest in these facilities because they were making less profit.
Right, and they wanted to renegotiate the terms with the country of Venezuela. In terms of,
so you're suggesting this was direct pressure by the oil companies for the American government to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when it started to really dive, we did nothing but put on more pressure.
Additional sanctions in 2015 by Obama, and then 2017 and 2019 and 2020 by the Trump administrations, effectively cutting them off from international credit markets. Their foreign assets were frozen. Their gold reserves were frozen, and they simply didn't have the ability to access their own money in many cases.
So there were no other social things or events or activities that were going on in Venezuela that supported the oil companies' request to the government to do what they were doing, saying, well, you're making less money, we're with you. There were no other events in Venezuela, no other circumstances in Venezuela that allowed our government to say, yeah, this is the time that we step on their throat.
Well, I mean, the indictment of Maduro has nothing to do with oil at all. I mean, the stated reason for him being, extradited, it's because the drug charges.
Right.
And why were there drug charges?
Right.
Right.
Allegedly, in
Allegedly.
the indictment,
Right.
Venezuela, Maduro specifically, and his inner circle were involved with other Latin American political / criminal groups, including Tren de Agua, including FARC, including ELN, and so all of these were included within the indictment as having a conspiracy.
I'm not suggesting that the pressure by the oil companies and the need to make larger profits or keep profits large, is a bad motive. I mean, that's part of our capitalist,
That's business.
system. That's business.
That's the cost of
However,
business.
what we haven't touched on is what are the other things that were going on in Venezuela to make us really put the foot on the throat. And I think and that's something that's not even really discussed today, other than the fact that he was indicted. What did you call him? A narco-terrorist?
Right.
Okay, for narco-terrorism. Isn't that important? I mean, do we have a national interest, a national security interest in curtailing drug trafficking coming into this country? Okay. So, I mean, how does that weave into this and into the justification of everything that went on before? Okay, his extraction from Venezuela.
I mean, I think it is important.
How
however,
important is that?
Yeah, it is important, except, studies have found that any drugs that have been produced in Venezuela were largely destined for Europe. They didn't really make it to American shores. So, I mean, in terms of this national emergency that's been created in the United States, within our 50 states, it's a little questionable.
You don't care about French drug addicts?
I absolutely do.
But isn't that their problem, right?
Right.
I mean, as far as what justifies a country to take another country's president under military force and bring them back to their home country. This crosses over a lot of international lines and has been really decried in the international community.
It's not the first time that the United States went into another country and did things similar to what they did to Maduro.
Sure.
For people watching,
Sure,
yeah,
but if it were
we
really
talked
about the drugs,
yeah,
then,
Noriega of Panama in 1989 by the first Bush administration. Yeah, he was also essentially, Angela, wasn't he? He was a narco-terrorist, right? Wasn't that the claim at the time that
accused narco
Accused.
sales.
Alleged,
Okay,
yes.
Alleged.
Well, I don't know. He was convicted, and I'm not sure if he's still alive, but he had a life sentence in prison in the U.S. So,
But the basis even of that
Yeah.
Like they're choosing the wrong target if it was really about
drugs. Right.
So then what's the target? Not the leader of the cartel or the business that's doing it?
Right. I mean, I think this administration in particular has been very dodgy when it comes to explaining their actions. Even with the bombing of those boats, they've just alleged without evidence that these people were in fact running drugs when there's no evidence. It's just a video of boats being blown up.
What level of disclosure would satisfy you that the actions that they took were actually against drug dealers?
Right.
I mean, is due process on the high seas something that we should be looking at?
I would expect
yeah.
at the very least.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, some of these folks were, in fact, caught alive. I know others were, were
They tried not to.
tried not to, but prosecuting them in an American court for drug distribution and drug smuggling, would have been something I think that most Americans would have been satisfied with
Right.
as evidence of, distribution and sale of narcotics.
So there's no moral justification for this, and I think we're saying that these actions were all morally unlawful and likely legally unlawful.
Legally very dubious.
I mean, it makes it very difficult because the president's gone on TV over the last week, and despite initially talking about the humanitarian situation in Venezuela, the deteriorating situation in Venezuela, as well as migrants coming to the United States from Venezuela, he has placed an enormous emphasis on the importance of the oil reserves in the country, the largest in the world.
Right. I
Which
mean,
happened to belong to Venezuela, but
So-
he doesn't seem to understand that.
if I may quote the president's exact words, so the oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. And that was at his Mar-a-Lago estate, where he gave a press conference.
Trump is always pretextual. I mean, what we've been talking about tonight and what has gone on for the last 20 years, he just has blown into an obvious. With him, it's obvious what this is all about.
I mean,
But
for all of us, it's obvious what it's all about.
It's not hard
He's
to hide.
indicted based on one thing, and then the drug charges, the drug trafficking. Then Trump is openly talking about how this is about the oil, go in for the oil. We're going to profit from the oil, and it's just the disconnect is not even subtle.
Right.
It's not even subtle what our interest
I mean, it
is in
feels
this
like
region.
as long as you wave the banner of national security, that just gives permission to do anything, including taking over Greenland, including bombing and
And if you look historically over is this action that we just took a war? Did he need congressional approval to
Right.
do it? Okay, the answer to that is not. If President has anything to say about it, the answer is no.
right.
Well, I mean, what about the War Powers Resolution? How does it play?
right.
I don't know. I can't answer that question, Your Honor.
So
Yeah.
in December 2010, when the U.S. had seized the oil tanker, Trump had categorized this, the bombing of the boats as well, categorized the situation as a non-international armed conflict. So you're using arms, you acknowledge this is a conflict, but because you say it's not involving the entire country of Venezuela, you still have the right to go in and use military forces right against the country.
And he also said this is
that's
like
okay.
a law enforcement. I mean, this is like a law
right.
enforcement thing.
Yeah.
It's not
A
a
military.
military
Well,
action.
that was pontificated way back when also. I mean,
Sure.
previous administrations had suggested that the police action is not war. And then when you're not actually trying to invade another country, that's war. Okay, just entering another country, okay, for police, for like the same things that you would do domestically doesn't rise to the level of war.
Yeah.
But I mean, the War Powers Resolution, though, I mean, it passed in '73.
Right.
It required, that the president had to apprise Congress within 48 hours sending troops, and then the second part of it was in 60 days. The president, if they didn't get, if the president doesn't have further authorization, you're supposed to pull those troops. Right. So the president really, based on what the Democrats were claiming, the president did not apprise Congress within 48 hours formally.
Right.
of this incursion
Right.
and capturing the foreign leader, and bringing him into, back into. Back to Brooklyn to be prosecuted.
No, so in public broadcasting had reported, again, the president's words. He did say that the military actions were necessary, and he did recognize it. He categorized it as a war. However, he did not notify members of Congress until after the strike, saying that Congress has a tendency to leak things. So again, kind of this, let's keep everything militarily intact, despite previous kerfuffles leaking things on social media with Pete Hegseth. On Signal, but let's not tell Congress about the important things that we may be doing that are unconstitutional.
I heard that the New York Times knew about it before it happened.
Right, that too.
But they agreed not to say anything because it would be like a security risk if they reported on it, so they just held off.
Right.
But I think when we were talking outside of the office, Gabe, you were, and actually Erica also, you were mentioning that the oil companies were told about the pending action
in advance
before it actually took place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, before and after. But yeah, I was curious what you all think is going to happen next as we continue to watch this situation unfold.
Right.
Do you have any predictions?
Well, I think, number one, that we're going to embrace the existing government in Venezuela and allow them to continue to operate.
You mean Rodriguez?
Yeah, because I think that in Trump's interest, he wants a corrupt government to remain in Venezuela because they'll play the kind of games that he needs them to play in order to pacify the oil companies. There's just going to be a different level of corruption with the revenues being split a little bit differently, okay, than when Maduro was in there. I don't know what impact it's going to have on drug trafficking because the evidence and the facts that seem to be accurate is that the narcotics from Venezuela weren't really directly coming to the United States, although I don't think that that's that important. I mean, the narcotics are narcotics wherever they're going. If we can keep them from going there, it's good for us. But that's the way this is going to play out. He's going to keep pressure on them. He's going to allow her to stay in power, and they're going to play their games with each other. Because if he puts in a duly elected democratic government, he won't be able to do that.
Right.
And the social programs that Chavez had put in, and I think would have worked, I don't think you're going to see anything like that reemerge in Venezuela. Right. The capitalists are going to resume their elite positions, and life is going to go on.
Right. I think as well a certain solidarity is needed across some of these countries that Trump has been targeting.
Yeah, because he's threatening
Cuba,
more.
including Mexico, including Greenland. I mean, everything seems to be up for grabs right now. Venezuela just being the first one to really be targeted, but he has made bold statements about other countries also being at risk of failure. And Cuba being corrupt, being right on the toppling edge. Mexico as well, alluding to their cartels.
He just wants to make deals with corrupt governments.
Oh, that's all. But I think as long as these countries are able to enact some sort of solidarity and recognize to each other that they have a mutual goal of resisting United States imperialism, whether it be just purely economic or military, I think the United States is going to back down from other kinds of actions like this. I would hope.
They're going to back down from doing other kinds.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, right. I don't think that Greenland's at risk of having the Fifth Fleet park outside of wherever their capital is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I would not put it past this current administration.
Do you think Cuba
altogether.
does, though?
I think they're legitimately concerned. Their entire source of energy was Venezuela, in terms of the ability to run public buses for people to drive on the island. Everything was from Venezuelan oil.
Right.
And the fact that that spigot is going to stop probably permanently at this point, this is where I'm going to agree with the President and the Secretary of State. I think Cuba's days are numbered.
Really?
Yeah.
You think that
as far as the revolutionary Cuba that created by Fidel Castro, I think those days are numbered.
Well, why is there why do Americans react so adversely to the socialist approach to running a country? There was a professor that I had here at UVM back in the 60s by the name of Michael Parenti, and he wrote a treatise or a book and then a series of books. And he was the individual who got me from a little bit on the right to more on the left. And he wrote a book called The Anti-Communist Impulse, which is basically what has gone on in this country since the 1950s, okay, and more into the 1960s. And it seems like the general public in this country still has that impulse, okay? There is something evil about socialism and communism that justifies all the things that are going on today, and that even the things like what Obama did and what Bush did, that's the evil that I think we should be trying to change in this country, is how do we get that rhetoric, how do we change that point of view and that mindset?
I think that's changing in part with Gen Z. A little bit. Yeah, I think they're a little more accepting and not thinking in terms of, the conflict between the Soviet Union and the USA. Right?
But I also think across the board, people just really aren't interested in unnecessary interventions.
Right? I don't want to be drafted.
Yeah.
But is the model in New York City going to tell us whether or not that approach is acceptable to large portions of Americans? I'm talking about a socialist approach to things, to a better distribution of the wealth, a better distribution of revenues. It's a big test. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to wait and see. It'll be interesting to see how the situation continues to unfold. But thank you all for joining. We'll see you next month. This was In Other News. And yeah, we'll just have to see what happens next.